She's almost ready for another attempt at a round-the-world flight at the equator in the 10,000-pound ship that cracked up in Honolulu nearly 2 months ago.
It's a real flying laboratory equipped with the latest of instruments, and I hope to accomplish something really worthwhile in aviation scientifically. The contemplated course covers about 27,000 miles. It will be the first flight, if successful, which approximates the equator.
Just why are you making this flight?
Well, GP, you know it's because I want to.
They had flown more than 22,000 miles, crossed oceans, continents, cultures. Only one segment remained. But history remembers this moment differently, because within hours, the Electra will vanish. No confirmed wreckage, no recovered bodies, only a final transmission.
We are on the line 157-337, running north and south.
What should have closed a story opened the most mysterious questions in aviation history. What everyone expected would end with certainty ended with silence.
"1918. In the first great war of the skies, 1 in every 3 of Britain's aviators came from Canada. Amid the fury of unnumbered dogfights, Canadians won deathless fame. Riding the storm of fire and lead, the men of Canada found their wings.
Before the name Amelia Earhart meant flight, it meant something quieter. A young woman moving between rows of wounded pilots in a Toronto hospital during the final years of the First World War. These were men who had fallen from the sky. Their injuries told the truth about what aviation demanded. Broken limbs, burns, the hollow stare of someone who had survived a mechanical failure they didn't understand. Amelia wasn't flying yet, but she was learning what flight cost. On her days off, she rode her bicycle out to the Royal Flying Corps training fields outside the city. She'd stand at the fence line for hours, watching student pilots take off, struggle through turns, and drop hard onto the grass. She didn't know the terminology yet, only that something in those machines called to her. That call sharpened in 1920 when she paid $10 for a short flight with pilot Frank Hawks. Just minutes in the air, but enough. She felt her life tilt towards something she couldn't step back from. Flying lessons followed. Amelia worked whatever jobs she could find to afford those mornings. Filing, telephone work, odd shifts that paid for fuel and time. Because staying earthbound no longer felt like an option. Amelia Earhart didn't enter aviation through open doors. She pushed her way in. Her first aeroplane, the Kenner Airster she named the Canary, was small, temperamental, and loud enough to draw a crowd even when she didn't want one. But it was hers. And for a woman in the early 1920s, that alone was an act of defiance. The world around her wasn't convinced. Flight clubs denied her entry. Training programs kept her on waiting lists that never seemed to open. Newspapers covered her more for her gender than her skill. But altitude records began to fall behind her. She climbed higher than any woman before her, testing the limits of both machine and expectation. And while her achievements grew, the resistance stayed the same. She was often the only woman on the airfield, the only woman at the mechanics bench, the only woman the press described with a tone caught somewhere between curiosity and condescension. Still, she flew. And each hour in the air made something inside her more certain. This wasn't a hobby. It wasn't rebellion. It was trajectory. By the mid-1920s, the country was entering a golden age of aviation. Barnstormers, air races, record attempts splashed across front pages. Pilots were modern celebrities, but Amelia wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing capability. The Canary carried her through the years when she was learning to be a pilot in a world still trying to decide whether she should be one at all. And somewhere in these years, between maintenance hangars, empty pockets, and ambition that refused to quiet, she began to attract attention from people who realized she wasn't just another lady flyer. She was someone who might, under the right circumstances, do something unprecedented. In 1928, the opportunity arrived, though not in the form Amelia Earhart had expected. A transatlantic flight was being assembled, backed by publishers and promoters who understood how powerful a single story could be. They wanted a woman on the crew, someone who could represent the achievement. Amelia fit the image of the modern aviator the public was already beginning to imagine. She was offered the role, not as pilot, not as navigator, as a symbolic presence on the flight. George Putnam, a prominent New York publisher with a sharp instinct for publicity, recognized the story immediately. He arranged photographs, interviews, and opportunities that helped shape how she was introduced to the world. Very quickly, the press began drawing parallels to Charles Lindbergh, noting her short hair, her lean frame, her quiet confidence. Lady Lindy, they wrote. A label created by others, not by her.
It's June 1928, and crew of airplane Friendship comes ashore at Southampton, England, after flight across the Atlantic. Pilot is none other than America's Miss Amelia Earhart, world's leading lady flyer.
Miss Earhart's aircraft taxis toward English shore at Southampton after first landing in Wales.
When the aircraft landed in Wales after its crossing, the reaction was immediate. Crowds, reporters, headline after headline declaring her a pioneer. But Amelia knew what had taken place during the flight. She observed. She supported. She did not fly the machine. Much of the coverage focused on her image, the novelty of a woman aboard the crossing, more than on the precise role she played. And the dissonance between public praise and private experience was unmistakable. She later expressed hope that the event would not be overstated, choosing careful, restrained words. But beneath that restraint, something else was taking shape, a clearer sense of what she wanted her achievements to mean. This moment, the applause she couldn't claim, became the quiet turning point that shaped everything that followed. The 1928 flight made her famous. But it also clarified the boundary she was determined to cross next, the line between being seen as a passenger and becoming a pilot history would remember. After the Atlantic crossing, Amelia Earhart returned to what mattered most: flying. Not as a passenger, as a pilot. That same year, she helped bring together licensed women pilots across the country. Their early meetings became the 99s, one of the first professional organizations for women in aviation. Amelia later became its first elected president, helping to shape a foundation of mutual support in a field that offered women little of it. During these years, her relationship with George Putnam grew more complex. He was still her publisher, managing the expanding demands of her public life. But the personal connection between them deepened. Putnam proposed marriage more than once. Amelia refused more than once, wary of anything that might confine the independence she had worked so hard to build. Their relationship moved forward carefully, shaped by admiration, tension, and her need to remain free on her own terms.
At Hatboro, Pennsylvania in 1930, Amelia becomes first woman to fly an autogyro. Married to famed publisher, here helping her into strange craft, Amelia is Mrs. George Putnam now. But as far as planes are concerned, she's still Amelia Earhart of the Airlanes, who will give flight to anything with wings. This is sort of ship Lady Lindy has never flown before, but she'll fly it just the same.
Between these commitments, she pushed herself further into new boundaries. She flew autogyros, experimental hybrid aircraft, completing a coast-to-coast tour across the United States in 1931. It was not a flawless journey. She experienced several minor accidents along the way. But she wanted experience at aviation's frontier, wherever it was opening.
The flight is over, but the brilliant career of Miss Earhart has some years to go. The mystery and tragedy of Amelia Earhart still lie in the far and unforeseeable future.
Can I help you with your parachute, Miss Earhart?
Thanks. All clear?
Well, there she goes, the first woman to take an autogyro up for an altitude record.
A safe return from a great flight. And with the record tucked away, now let's hear what thrills, sensations, and experiences she had up there.
Well, was it very cold now? Was it freezing?
Oh, it probably was freezing. It felt so. My hands got a little cold.
How fast were you going, do you think, at the time that you reached the ceiling?
Oh, I was climbing about 100 feet a minute, I should say, and I ran out of gasoline.
Did you come down very fast?
No, I came down gently because it might hurt one's ears if one comes down too fast.
By 1932, a steady determination had taken hold. The 1928 Atlantic crossing had made her famous, but it had not answered the question she carried. She had crossed the ocean once, but not as a pilot. If she was going to repeat the attempt, it would be entirely by her own hands.
I feel as if I were in readiness for a transatlantic hop. I've chosen a ship with which I am familiar, having flown it for about 3 years. What is the latest report, Bert, on the weather?
The report from the Weather Bureau is a high over the middle Atlantic, a high over the Hudson Bay area, and a low towards the Irish coast.
George Palmer Putnam bids his wife goodbye.
Please don't forget the phone just the minute you get there, eh?
I will.
Goodbye.
So long.
It was a dangerous proposition. Flying the Atlantic alone was still considered one of the most perilous feats in aviation. So risky that many experienced male pilots refused to attempt it after Lindbergh.
Miss Earhart flew from New York to Harbor Grace, Newfoundland, where she took off late in the afternoon.
On May 20th, 1932, she lifted off from Newfoundland in her Lockheed Vega, bound for Europe. Alone. No co-pilot. No margin for hesitation.
While only 600 miles out, the altimeter and fuel gauge were damaged. Approaching Ireland, the exhaust manifold burned out, and she decided on a landing.
But she managed each crisis with the same control that had defined her since her earliest lessons. When she dropped through the clouds at dawn and saw the fields of Northern Ireland below, she knew she had done what she intended. Not smoothly, not easily, but entirely. The first woman to fly the Atlantic alone.
Amelia Earhart Putnam, first woman to solo the Atlantic, picked a hillside near Londonderry, Ireland, to land. Miss Earhart's hosts were the owners of her pasture lot landing field, Mr. and Mrs. George Gallagher. Worldwide congratulations prepared Miss Earhart for her London welcome, all excepting the rain.
Pleasure for me to be here in England. I really had no objective when I started. I struck rain like this on the way across, so I'm not unaccustomed to this at all. It's rather a pleasure, in fact.
When asked if she had been scared, she replied with warm good humor, "It would sound more exciting if I only could admit being shockingly frightened, but I honestly wasn't." This wasn't overt modesty on the young woman's part. She'd been flying airplanes since 1918, so this particular flight had proved no great trial for her.
I do not think that such solo trips as mine will become commonplace very soon. However, I foresee regular transatlantic service established certainly within our lifetimes, and I hope to be privileged to be a passenger on such a trip.
Crowds await her arrival at the station in Paris. Crowds just as enthusiastic as after her first flight 4 years ago.
I'm overwhelmed with the reception here and feel the honor is really not deserved. All I can say is now that I'm just as glad to return now as I was then.
Broadway, ticker tape, hullabaloo, wow. Perhaps the outstanding woman of 1932. Happy landings, Amelia.
Amelia Earhart's solo Atlantic flight changed the trajectory of her life and the expectations placed on her. She had proven herself, not as a symbol, but as a pilot, and she used that momentum to push further.
It's much easier to fly the Atlantic Ocean now than it was a few years ago. I expect to be able to do it in my lifetime again.
In August 1932, she flew nonstop across the United States from Los Angeles to Newark, becoming the first woman to complete the journey alone. It was a long, restless night of shifting weather and navigation by instinct as much as instrument.
Miss Amelia Earhart landing at Newark Airport after the first women's non-stop transcontinental flight.
When she landed, she stepped out of the cockpit with the same understatement that had become her signature. Another barrier crossed. Another boundary moved.
It took me about 19 hours and a few minutes to make the trip. I wish I could have done it faster.
What did you carry on the trip?
You mean to eat?
Yeah, to eat and drink.
Well, I carried some water, of course, because my cockpit is very warm. And I carried a sandwich in case. I didn't eat it, though. I carried some hot chocolate and the old reliable tomato juice.
What kind of a sandwich was it?
Chicken sandwich.
You haven't got that around now, have you?
Yes, I have it in the cockpit.
Lectures, endorsements, and public appearances followed.
I christen the Essex Terraplane.
But she kept her focus on the work. She spoke often about aviation's future, about education, about the place women should be able to hold in the sky if given the chance. Attention was not her goal. It was the leverage she used to open the door behind her. Then came the flight many believed she would not survive.
Miss Earhart, do you intend to make flight from the Hawaiian Islands to the mainland?
Well, I haven't announced officially any flight yet, but pilots are always dreaming dreams.
In January 1935, she became the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to the American mainland, a route that had already claimed several male pilots. The Pacific between Oahu and California was an unforgiving stretch. No alternate landing fields, no visual markers, only open water. Still, Amelia prepared carefully, studying winds, fuel consumption, and the failures that had doomed earlier attempts. Midway through the flight, an exhaust manifold briefly caught fire. She remained calm, adjusted the power, and continued. Alone above thousands of miles of open ocean. Hours later, Oakland appeared through the haze.
Here's finish of brilliant 2,400-mile journey, 18 1/4 hours after takeoff.
And the crowd waiting there saw what aviation had become. A pilot capable not only of endurance or courage, but control in the face of the most challenging conditions the field could offer.
Well, it was very interesting to me to fly in southern climate rather than in the north. On the Atlantic flight, I encountered storm and ice conditions. On this flight, practically no bad weather at all, only a few little rain squalls. And I saw the moon and stars for most of the night. But in both flights, of course, I was very glad to see land.
These years made her more than a record setter. They made her a presence, someone whose skill had been tested repeatedly and publicly, someone who could speak with authority about aviation's future and the people who might shape it. By 1935, Amelia Earhart was no longer rising. She was established, a leading aviator, a public voice, and a woman who had begun looking toward a far greater horizon.
You sit right in the swing, you're very comfortable.
By 1936, Amelia Earhart had become one of the most recognized pilots in the world, not because she symbolized possibility, but because she had demonstrated it. But she wasn't done. If she could conquer the distances that had stopped others cold, then there was only one horizon left: the world. With funding from Purdue University, she acquired a new aircraft, the Lockheed Electra 10E.
Miss Earhart is inspecting her new plane, and alongside of it on the right is the old plane.
A long-range, twin-engined flying laboratory tailored for a mission no one had attempted in full.
It's a real flying laboratory equipped with the latest of instruments, and I hope to accomplish something really worthwhile in aviation scientifically. I myself am particularly interested in the reaction of the human being to all aspects of flying. I hope the experiments will include altitude flying and also long-distance work. In place of the passenger seats, I've installed large gasoline tanks holding 1,150 gallons.
Amelia Earhart completes her preparations for her 27,000-mile flight around the world at the equator.
The planning was demanding. Routes shifted. Weather models changed. Equipment remained partly experimental. And assembling the right team became another challenge.
With her on the jump across the Pacific, her navigator will be Captain Harry Manning, but he is expected to go only as far as Australia.
Contemplated course covers about 27,000 miles. It will be the first flight, if successful, which approximates the equator.
The first attempt began westward in March 1937 with Earhart, Noonan, and navigator Harry Manning aboard. Technical advisor Paul Mance supported the preparation from the ground.
This is Paul Mance, famous pilot, who is helping me on the forthcoming flight, as he has on several previous ones. On my left is Captain Harry Manning, who will serve as navigator on the long Pacific overwater jump.
Everything was all right when she took off from the west coast. Fast ship had been checked for the 27,000-mile flight, and it was on to Honolulu.
But in Honolulu, the Electra ground looped during takeoff. The landing gear collapsed. The wing struck the runway. The flight ended before it could continue.
And leaving Honolulu at crack-up ended the flight. Miss Earhart immediately cut the switches, saving her life and the two men.
Lockheed Workmen have done so well repairing the plane that I hope to hop off again the latter part of May.
After the accident, the team reshaped itself. By the time the aircraft was repaired, only Earhart and Noonan remained to make the second attempt. Repairs were completed, the route was reversed, and the weight of expectation settled squarely on a single goal: to finish what she had started.
Outside of mechanical equipment and spares, I have only two pieces of luggage. One, my map case, and the other, personal belongings, expect to need on a trip around the world.
Amelia Earhart did not slow when conditions grew uncertain. She adjusted, recalculated, and moved forward. By June 1937, the Electra was ready again. The world flight attempt resumed, this time eastward. 2 people, 1 aircraft, and the longest flight she had ever attempted.
Just why are you making this flight?
Well, GP, you know it's because I want to.
To a husband, that has a fairly familiar sound. But aside from that, you expect to accomplish something for aviation, do you not?
Well, yes, I do. And if the flight's successful, I hope it will increase women's interest in flying. If so, it will be worthwhile as far as I'm concerned.
Well, how about taking me along?
Well, of course, I think a great deal of you, but 180 pounds of gasoline on a flight perhaps might be a little more valuable.
You mean you prefer 180 pounds of gasoline to 180 pounds of husband?
I think you've guessed right.
The second attempt began without ceremony. On June 1st, 1937, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan lifted off from Miami and headed south, the start of a route that would take them across the equator, through heat, storms, and stretches of sky few pilots had crossed before. They moved down into South America, where the coastline stretched for miles. Landings became pauses rather than destinations. The continent passed beneath them as a sweep of jungle, river, and distant haze, each departure carrying them deeper into the sheer scale of the world they were trying to cross. The Atlantic narrowed as they crossed toward Africa. Dakar peered through the glare, a strip of runway cut into heat and open coast. They didn't linger. Fuel was taken on, bearings checked, and they moved inland again, watching the continent unfold beneath them in wide, arid distances. India demanded adjustment. Karachi's airfield was hot and unforgiving. Moving toward Calcutta, monsoon weather closed in. Humidity, cloud, and unpredictable winds turning each leg into a test of attention and endurance. Southeast Asia tightened the pressure. Storms that rose fast, hit hard, and left the Electra shaking as it pushed through cloud and shifting wind. Visibility narrowed into shades of gray, and long stretches of the route offered nothing but water beneath them and turbulent air ahead. Navigation in these conditions demanded constant calculation, and the effort of keeping the Electra on course was beginning to wear at them. The route ahead was growing more demanding with each leg. They reached Leh on June 29th, the final substantial land stop before the Pacific's emptiest distance. By now, they had flown over 22,000 miles over 28 days. Continents, oceans, jungles, deserts behind them. Only the Pacific remained. But the next leg, Leh to Howland Island, was the most fragile of the entire route, a target barely wider than a landing strip. On July 2, 1937, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan departed Leh just after 10 in the morning. The Electra lifted into a heavy sky, carrying the largest fuel load of the entire world flight, and pointed itself toward empty ocean. No alternate airfields, no room for major drift, and an island barely 2 miles long waiting somewhere ahead. At first, the messages were steady. Leh operators heard her clearly.
About 7,000 feet, 150 knots. Weather cloudy.
But as the flight moved deeper into the Pacific, cloud built around them. Forecasts had underestimated the wind. The drift increased. Hours later, a faint transmission reached the Coast Guard cutter Itasca, waiting near Howland Island.
KHAQQ calling Itasca. Please take bearing on us and answer.
Replies were sent to guide her in. She heard none of them. Then came her clearest message.
We must be on you, but cannot see you. Gas is running low.
Somewhere above the Pacific, she was searching. Somewhere below, the Itasca waited, scanning an empty horizon. Her final confirmed transmission came at 8:43 a.m.
We are on the line 157-337, running north and south.
And then, nothing. No further confirmed contact, no verified sighting, no confirmed trace of the Electra.
On July 3rd, after taking off from New Guinea, headed for Howland Island, she and Noonan disappeared. Tiny Howland Island had been missed. The United States immediately organized a huge search. The battleship Colorado and the carrier Lexington were pressed into duty to aid the Coast Guard cutter Itasca, who had been stationed in the area to assist with the flight. Some 200,000 square miles of ocean and nearby islands were to be searched, but to no avail. Whether she and her navigator had been lost at sea or had been captured and executed by the Japanese, who were in command of several nearby islands, no one has been able to prove conclusively. Her fate still remains a mystery. A last letter to her husband briefly summed up Amelia Earhart's philosophy of flying. She wrote, "Please know that I am aware of the hazards. I want to do it. Women must try to do these things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be a challenge to others."
For more than 2 weeks, ships and aircraft recorded coordinates, sightings, and empty horizons. The search continued outward, further and further, and still the Pacific stayed silent. When the effort finally ended, it left only uncertainty behind. No confirmed wreckage, no final position, just an open ocean and a missing aircraft. Amelia Earhart had vanished, and no one could say where, or how, or why. In 1937, the Pacific was shifting beneath the world's feet. Japan was extending its military reach through the Marshall and Mariana Islands, fortifying airfields, reinforcing harbors, and closing entire territories to outsiders. Aircraft approaching those waters were watched, judged, and sometimes intercepted. This was a region tightening under suspicion, and into that atmosphere flew Amelia Earhart, a global icon in the sky, and someone unusually close to the center of American political life on the ground.
Mrs. Roosevelt, won't you go for a ride tonight over Washington? It's really lovely from the air at night. I'd be very glad to go for a ride over Washington. I like going at night and seeing the lights very much.
She was a friend of Eleanor Roosevelt, a familiar presence inside the White House, and a woman whose counsel presidents valued on aviation and public issues. After she vanished, those connections took on a different tone. People began to wonder whether the world flight carried more weight than publicity. Whether, with tensions rising across the Pacific, Earhart's route offered the United States a quiet chance to observe what Japan was building in waters no American aircraft should officially approach. From that idea, the theory unfolds that somewhere along her final route, she drifted toward Japanese-held territory. That her aircraft, seen, misidentified, or intercepted, was forced down. That she and Fred Noonan were taken into custody on one of the fortified islands rising across the region. After World War II, the stories began. In the Marshall Islands, islanders told U.S. servicemen and later researchers of a plane that came down near an atoll and 2 foreigners, a man and a woman, taken by Japanese forces. On Saipan, Marines later recalled hearing local accounts of a short-haired woman once held under guard and scattered memories of a twin-engine aircraft moved by barge. None of these accounts were written down in 1937. All emerged years later, but they lingered, fragments that refused to settle. Over the decades, researchers traced everything they could find: ship logs, radio records, naval dispatches, wartime intelligence files. But the trail was scattered across agencies and decades, some pages intact, others missing, and a few with unexplained black bars obscuring lines in documents that happened to reference her flight, the search, or the Pacific region she vanished over. None of it offers certainty, but the gaps, the scattered records, and those blacked-out sections in documents from the era gave this theory a shadowed edge. The sense that not every piece of the story made it cleanly onto the public record. And if Amelia Earhart never reached Japanese shores, could she have slipped back into America unseen? Where one theory imagined Amelia Earhart pulled into currents of global tension, another imagined something far quieter. In the decades after her disappearance, as the world searched for answers and found none, a new idea emerged: that Amelia Earhart had come home in secret and became a woman named Irene Bolam. Bolam was a banker and clubwoman from New Jersey, a private figure with a composed manner and a life that, on paper, began just after Amelia vanished. To some observers, she carried a faint resemblance to the missing aviator, arguing that the two women shared features too similar to dismiss. The theory reached its height in 1970, when a popular book claimed outright that Bolam was Earhart living under an assumed name. Bolam herself rejected the claim fiercely. She produced documents establishing her identity and pursued legal action against the publisher. The book was eventually withdrawn, but by then, the myth had taken on a life of its own. And if the Bolam story was never hers, then the question returns to the map and to the faint calls heard across the Pacific nights. In the days after Earhart's final confirmed transmission, something unexpected happened. Across the Pacific, radio operators, professional and amateur, reported hearing faint signals on frequencies she was known to use. Voices, numbers, broken phrases that sounded like distress calls. Most were impossible to authenticate, but some were strong enough for operators to attempt rough bearings. When plotted, those lines did not point toward Howland Island. They traced along the same line that Earhart herself reported before she vanished.
We are on the line 157-337.
That line stretches southeast across open water and passes directly over a remote coral atoll. Gardner Island, now called Nikumaroro. Even if one of those radio signals was genuine, it meant the Electra was not underwater. Its batteries had to be powering the transmitter, which meant Amelia Earhart had reached land. Nikumaroro is the only land on that line. A long reef flat at low tide, rough but landable in an emergency, and far outside the area the search ever reached. Three years later, in 1940, colonial officers on the island found something curious. Partial human remains, a sextant box, and fragments of a woman's shoe. The bones were measured briefly, classified at the time as male, and then lost. But decades later, the measurements were re-examined and suggested a profile closer to that of a tall, Northern European woman than the original analysis allowed. Modern expeditions returned to the island again and again. They found small metal fragments, possible remnants of a camp, and an aluminum sheet some believed matched repair work done on Earhart's Electra. None of it is definitive. None of it proves she stood on that reef. But together, the reported radio signals, the lines she gave while still airborne, the geography of the atoll, and the artifacts scattered across its shore form the most compelling alternative to a disappearance at sea. A castaway scenario, a landing on a lonely reef, signals calling into the dark, and a rescue that never came. And if she never touched that reef, if no call ever came from the shore, then perhaps the silence that followed was the only answer she had time to leave. After all the possibilities are weighed, capture, survival, island landings, hidden signals, one explanation remains the simplest and the most widely accepted: that Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan missed Howland Island, ran out of fuel, and disappeared into the Pacific. Later reconstructions showed headwinds stronger than forecast, slowing the Electra and consuming more fuel than expected. If they reached the point where ocean and sky became indistinguishable, with no land in sight and no radio contact to guide them in, the margin for recovery narrowed to nothing. Below them lay one of the deepest stretches of ocean on Earth, a place where wreckage could vanish in minutes and never return to the surface. For more than 2 weeks, the Navy and Coast Guard searched thousands of square miles, flying grid patterns, examining every glint on the water, every disturbance on the sea. They found nothing. No debris, no oil slick, no trace of the Electra.
As the Navy continued its intensive search for the lost aviatrix, the world hoped that she may be safe and the burden lifted from those to whom she is dear.
In the absence of evidence to the contrary, the crash and sink theory stands as the quiet, stark possibility that Earhart's final moments ended not with capture or survival or hidden messages, but with a descent into the Pacific, beyond the reach of rescue and beyond the reach of discovery.
On round-the-world trip in 1937, she disappears over waters of Pacific. But world will never forget Amelia Earhart.
Amelia Earhart's disappearance became one of the great mysteries of the 20th century. But the truth of her life, the part she left behind, is not a mystery at all. She changed what flight looked like. She changed who it was for. And she showed a generation that courage was not a performance, but a decision made again and again, in the face of doubt, fear, and expectation. Every record she set pushed the horizon a little farther. Every barrier she crossed left room for someone else to follow. The organizations she helped build still operate today. The women she inspired still call her name when they take to the air. Her story ends in silence, but her impact does not. Amelia Earhart didn't just vanish. She widened the sky for everyone who came after her.